Hello everyone, Saint here with another edition of Let's Make a Game Astral Collision. Just finished the playtest for the week. If you want to see that, there will be a link to the most recent playtest in the description below. But this will come out a little bit afterwards because I have a delay on things. That way I can make sure that these go up on time even if I change the recording date. So, trying to think back through all the things that have changed versus the things that are already gotten done. I think last time I'd finished doing the stat updates for the player characters and went over the way that I went about doing that. So that process is been done, at least for the time being. Stuff will probably need to be tweaked. Just recently, not this guy, this guy, during the playtest, I did change this to have its own variable that it uses for temporary usage because I was finding that using the standard temp variable that I had made, for reference, whoops, that's not how you do things in this spacebar's edit. This temp right here, because this is parallel, it gets called regularly and has a tendency to mess stuff up, which is less than ideal, shall we say. So what I've done at this point is I have finished going through and figuring out what all of the equipment's doing and updating it. And I've started working on spells. Enemies will need to kind of get finished as well. But what I've decided is that Cape has no particular base functionality. So basically the thought process that I'm having here for equipment is I want equipment within certain categories to be consistent. I think I mentioned this last time, but just as a refresher, because it's been a week since that came out, there are quite a few different types of equipment, and I want to make sure that each type of equipment has some sort of consistent functionality that you can expect. So capes don't necessarily have a base functionality, they just kind of do what makes sense. So what my general plan is that capes are going to do damage reduction primarily. So they're going to do different types. Like there's going to be a Traveler's Cape that's going to reduce damage from like common elements, for example. Or like a Duelist Cape that gives you more counter attack. So it's just going to be like, they're going to be able to do things. That one's going to be a lot more flavor oriented, a lot more what I'd call Narvazod, which is kind of the non-mechanical area. It's going to be driven by like the concept rather than mechanics. But rings are going to boost one stat at the cost of another. So, for example, if we go and we look at the rings that are in the game, I've made templates for everything too, but you can see that these guys are all like 50% more of one stat, 50% less of another stat. That's how those words are supposed to come together. Necklaces, I currently have 3 categories. There's the silver necklaces that grant you condition immunity, the amulets that give you a debuff immunity, and then lockets are going to come with singular skills. There's probably going to be a lot more lockets in the game than anything else if I had to guess in terms of necklaces. The other thing that I've done is I've made it so that way all character types, all classes can use all 3 types of accessories, which is what capes, rings, and necklaces are. Just I wanted to do that. Originally, it was kind of like based on certain things, but I want you to have a lot of choices here, a lot of options of what it is that you're doing, and so I didn't want to limit it that way. It's still limited on other stuff, but these feel like things where there's going to be several different types of necklaces within the necklace category of equipment. These are conceptual separations, not like type separations. So what I mean by that is if we go to types, you can see, I don't know where it's going to be in this list. Right here's necklace. I'm not splitting this up into 3 different types. I'm just conceptually naming things, different things. So that way you have a consistent naming scheme going on, is the idea there. Then gloves don't necessarily do a whole lot. They increase 2 stats by 5% each. They're a big way that you kind of can increase stats, and they also increase your physical and magical accuracy by 3%, which is useful. Gauntlets increase physical accuracy by 10%, so this helps you critical hit more often. They also increase weapon damage by 10%. This is actually not accurate. Or yeah, no, it is accurate. Excuse me, I was thinking of something else. The reason why I was thinking of that is there's a specific set of gloves that does a little bit more complicated thing. But so if I go to armors, gauntlets, and yes, there's a gap here because I moved stuff around to rearrange things. To get the rings out of here, and I have a beaded bracelets and a metal bracelets. So we'll get into that in a moment. But yeah, so right here, damage multiplier 1.1. So like one of the things that's really annoying is I just need a way to kind of like tell you what the base functionality of something is, and it's just not present. What I'm thinking I might do is just like how I made the thing for the bestiary, and we'll get to the bestiary in a bit. I might need to make something similar for viewing equipment stats, because right now, as it is, like knowing what all the different things are is a bit difficult. But they have so they increase your accuracy by 10%, your counter attack by 5%, and your guard effect by 10 multiplier of 10%, not just plus. So it makes your guard a little bit more effective, and it reflects that right here. So there's two types of bracelets. All bracelets boost your spell accuracy by 10%. Beaded bracelets have your maximum HP, but give you 2 zealous, which means that your attacks gain you 2 MP when you hit. And then metal bracelets give you more maximum MP. That's their effect. They give you plus 20 maximum MP. Tunics give you some good evasion and have 2 MP regen. Body armor does not give any MP regen, but it reduces most damage types by 33%. Not these. So in my brain, I categorize the elements into, or the damage types into 3 loose buckets. There's the physical damage types of striking, piercing, and slashing. There is the simple element, like the simple spell types or simple element types of fire, water, earth, and wind. And then there's the complex ones of light, dark, lightning, ice, metal, and life. So this does not reduce the simple ones, but it reduces the other ones by 33%. And it boosts TP gain by 50%, but doesn't have any bonus MP regen. Plate mail reduces the physical ones, the striking, slashing, piercing by 50%. Fire, water, wind, and earth by 25%, but does not affect the complex types. Makes you more likely to be targeted, makes your guard better, but gives you no bonus regen. Robes give you plus 3 MP regen and reduces Omni damage, which kind of sits outside of that. It just kind of represents, like, I don't have a specific type for this. That's Omni. It kind of represents the combination of fire, water, wind, and earth all at once, rather than the 2 type things that get into the complex elements, which is why they're complex elements. So it reduces that by 80%, just to give it a little bonus effect. Jackets are now plus 2 MP regen. Simple elements reduced by 50% and complex by 25%. So it's a bit of a complement to plate mail. It's kind of the magical version of plate mail. This is very defensively oriented, and gives you reasonable MP regen. The Gambeson gives you a little bit of MP regen. So if you're a physical attacker that's able to use a Gambeson, you can get slightly more MP regen from that. It reduces striking, piercing, and slashing damage by 25%. And gives a little bit of evasion. So it's a slightly different thing. It's a little bit less raw bulk compared to like body armor or plate mail, but gives you a little bit more MP regen and some more evasion. I don't know about the MP regen values or anything. This is still kind of like base thoughts on stuff. Dresses give you 2 MP regen, and they increase your healing and your critical evasion rate. So that allows you to be able to avoid getting critical hit as often. So because shoes often you only have 1 type for a character, I wanted to, like, if we go over to equipment use planning, you can see I modified accessories to just give them to everybody. But if we look at footwear, like we have got a lot of characters like you can only use shoes or you can only use boots. That sort of thing. I wanted to make sure that these were fairly simple. So standard shoes just give you 5% to both evasion types. Standard boots boost guard by 150% and reduce damage from terrain by 50%. So the idea here is that these help you dodge, and these will help you with the guard action. So using boots to boost your guard is potentially quite useful. I want to make sure guarding is actually good. It's like the game definitely emphasizes aggression because, I mean, all of these games do, but guarding actually does a lot. And if you actually get statted up, it can really reduce damage tremendously. So if you're really getting pummeled on a character and you need a time to heal, guarding, good idea. Hats are just supposed to reduce damage from either 2 elements by 15% or 1 element by 25%. A standard helmet gives you a bit of critical evasion and reduces any 1 element by 20%. Now, notice that this says, aside from striking, slashing, or piercing, hats do not protect you from striking, slashing, or piercing. They're just from the simple or complex elements rather than the physical ones. The full helmet, this one's, you got some complexity here, but it boosts your guard. It boosts your maximum HP. This is the only thing that boosts your maximum HP right now on equipment, I believe, if I remember correctly. And it also reduces the physical elements by 10% and the simple elements by 5%. But it lowers your accuracy, which makes it harder to get critical hits and things like that. So, like, this can be useful if you have a character that already has a lot of accuracy, so it's not as big of a downside. But it does kind of effectively reduce your critical rate in order to gain a bunch more additional defense. So if we look at full helmet template right here, you can see slashing, striking, piercing are down, and these are all down, but hit rate goes down, but maximum HP goes up. So that, like, having more maximum HP does a good bit to help increase your bulk. I'll go into that one later. Clicked on the wrong thing. Pointed hat gives you plus 10 maximum MP and plus 10% spell accuracy. That's kind of its base effect. Again, like, these are all base effects, so things can be grafted onto these. And I have definitely done so. Circlets are going to reduce an MP cost by some percent, but increase magical damage by the same percent. Comb just gives you a chance to inflict conditions with your attacks. That's what combs do. Ribbons are similar to dresses in that they boost healing and critical evasion avoidance. I feel like that's a good spot to have them in. They kind of have the idea of you're a little bit more lucky. And 5% critical evasion doesn't sound like much, but if something only has 103% accuracy, then this literally will make you immune to critical hits from it. Like, they have to be able to exceed, they have to be able to get accuracy rolls that exceed 100% plus your critical evasion in order to be able to critical hit you. So this right here does quite a bit, and actually the shields do a lot to prevent critical hits. But like this right here, the dress, the 25% critical evasion, is going to be able to avoid a lot of additional critical hits because of that. Because a lot of things aren't necessarily going to be that much higher, over 100% for their accuracy. So that's something that really matters. Headbands will preserve TP. Goggles increase accuracy by 25%. Metal shields give plus 20% critical evasion, plus 5% counter chance, and plus 300% guard, whereas wooden shields give plus 10% critical evasion and only 200% boosted guard. Now, these are plus versus multipliers, so the plus signs really matter here. But these give a lot more counter attack chance. And then focuses will give plus 24 maximum MP, and they can give a 10% boost to one stat or 5% boost to two stats, but increase spell accuracy, or they also increase spell accuracy by 50%. So you really need equipment in order to boost your spell accuracy. That's one of the things that I want to have happen. I don't know if this is the best way of looking at these or not, but this is what we've done. So if I go back over here, again, all of these are represented in the way these things are laid out. You can say a ring template, focus template. There are like some exceptions in terms of how I've implemented some stuff. For example, some of these earlier pieces of equipment really needed specific, let's see, focus. So the adventurer's focus right here does not increase any of your stats, but instead gives you a skill that does. That gives you plus 25% the first time you use it, and then plus 50 the second. So if you use Spell Charge, it's actually a bigger boost than what you'd normally get, and this affects all of your stats. Additionally, there's also another focus, the Carved Oak focus right here. It gives you 8 to all of your, just a raw plus 8, and then 1% boost to all of your stats. This one's very strong early on. In my playtest earlier, I definitely wanted to be using this because it was giving around 10 or 11 additional to all of the types, which is a huge boost. This is going to be very, very useful early game, and it's going to drop off a lot late game because that 1% is just not going to count for very much. That's pittance. It's a roughly fifth of a level. A level is about 5%. But early on, 8 in all of the stats is very strong. So this is something that's made to kind of like boost casters a lot early. I'm not sure if I'm going to want to keep it that way or not, but that's where it is right now. I'm not going to go over like every single piece of equipment. I had to make some decisions about what things are going to look like. This is the one where I was like getting a little bit confused. This one has a raw increases your maximum weapon damage range. So your weapon will normally add like blah to blah. Like that's kind of the damage min to damage max. This increases damage max. So if you have good accuracy, this will add damage. And it's a fourth, it's basically half the average of your strength and dexterity, which is them added together over 4. I still need to go through a lot of stuff and to kind of tweak it down. I'm not going to go over all of the equipment here. We can talk about some of the weapon templates. Daggers now give you more hit rate rather than more crit rate because that's now magical accuracy. Swords have slightly better counter chance. Some weapons have less hit rate on them. That just means that you need more hit rate in order to be able to get maximum value out of them. Axes are very much that way. They lower your hit rate by 15%, which decreases how hard they can hit and how easily you can critical and stuff. Staves give you a whopping plus 50% magical accuracy. They really help in that regard. I don't know. I can just kind of scroll through them. I did go through and figure out all of the formulas for weapons as well. I can talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Spear template. Yeah, this is... They boost evasion, which is really nice. Yeah, you can see the mace has really bad accuracy on it. It's really hard to use a mace well. Scepter gives you plus 30% magical accuracy, but the thing is, a staff is two-handed, so you can't use a focus with it. With a focus, this is like 45. A staff is still better. But I'll kind of just scroll through these. Pipes have a little bit of accuracy down. Slingshots are accuracy up. Chainsaws are real good on the accuracy. Magical missile actually boosts your hit accuracy a lot. Plus 75% is a lot. Your magical accuracy only a little bit though. This is like if you want to be spamming the attack button with a caster, you want a magic missile type weapon. Katanas have really good hit rate, and they actually boost your counterattack quite a lot as well. Tomes also give a ludicrous amount of magical accuracy. So if you really need magical accuracy up, staves and tomes are the way to go. But that means you can't use a focus or a shield or something. So if you want a magical one-handed weapon, you need to use magic missile or a scepter. And between those, scepter is better at actually boosting your casting accuracy. And then we just have the scimitars. There's only a limited number of scimitars, so there's not a whole lot to talk about with them. I have started going through skills. I still need to kind of go further. But like this is now 2 to 3 times your fire stat and damage. Spells feel like they're a little bit weak compared to where I kind of theoretically want them, but like Gust feels kind of weak at wind to wind times 2, plus 20%. So I don't know. I'm going to need to kind of tweak some of that stuff. This one feels pretty good. But I've added this spell damage function in order to be able to calculate stuff. We'll talk about that. I've just started the process. I nerfed Healing Spring a little bit, by the way. I've just started the process. Like Shattering Wind still needs to be updated, but a lot of these have been modified to appropriately handle this. So I'll finish getting through them. Like Stone Volley is too strong right now. Just based on that. So I'm basically taking the idea that a stat should be roughly an eighth of your maximum MP. So if I'm taking a stat times like 3, that's about like a 3-shot. 4 is a 2-shot. 2 is a 4-shot. So it's a rough approximation of things and not entirely representative of stuff, but this is boosting it up towards theoretical 4-shot territory, but keep in mind this hits 3 times. So it's already got a 3 times multiplier on it. So that's bringing it up to like 75% of your maximum HP. And that's if the enemy's stats are not real high, because keep in mind, a lot of things have higher stats than that. So stuff is still getting tweaked, but that's just kind of like like Water Pulse is way too strong right now, for example. So I just need to go through all of the skills, which I'm not super excited about because there's lots of them. And I need to go through all of these skills as well and tweak stuff. And then all of the skills down here as well for weapons. So it's just going to be a long process going through all of those, and also just going through and tweaking all of the enemies. Like the Forgotten Spirit, which maybe has too much earth damage on it. One of the things I realized is I need to modify a lot of these values for the early game areas because they're not in a good position. These guys are quite resistant to slashing damage, which a lot of the starting weapons are. And there's no water damage on the initial set of spells. So I need to add a water skill to that. I might switch Water Pulse down a little bit to put it more in line with that and kind of tweak some of the stuff. But anyway, that's enough of my rambling about that. Let's talk about formulas here. So I do have over here in weapon planning the thing where I kind of was doing all the math on things. So you can see, like, here's the averages. So the mace looks really high, but keep in mind it has the notes over here are not necessarily representative anymore. But so the pipe and magic missile are ones that I'm keeping an eye on. That's why they're that color. The pipe looks pretty high. The mace looks really high. Keep in mind the mace has a huge accuracy deficit, and it's slow. So those two things are going to decrease the effective damage if you don't have high accuracy rate. And then I can just switch the level to 99. It pushes everything up, so you can kind of see where things are in the range there. Gloves have a ridiculous critical hit. And Pipe's under observation because its damage is absolutely atrocious, but its critical hit at max level is bonkers. So I'm going to need to keep an eye on it to see if a nearly 30 times multiplier on critical hits is too strong or not. So that's why that's under observation. I don't know if Magic Missile is in a good spot or not as well, so that's why that's under observation. So those are ones particularly that I'm kind of looking at. Yes, thank you, note. So otherwise, and gloves also have a very good crit multiplier at this level. Flintlock does as well. These scale with stats, which is why they're colored. The idea is it was telling you which stat it scaled with. So, although these are no longer like individually colored for some reason, I don't know. It doesn't matter anymore. But you can see that like I'm trying to generally keep things in around the like basically near this average, or their average. Some stuff is a little bit lower. Energy Sword here is a little bit lower because it scales up with maximum MP. So if I had like 120 MP, it's going to jump a lot. Which you can get to 120 MP, maximum MP, but you're dedicated your gear to doing so. It also scales up a little bit with some other stuff. But anyway, that's kind of an overview of where the formulas go. And I went over here and actually modified stuff. So like the sword now, instead of using this formula, which goes absolutely bonkers when stat values were outside of the expected ranges. I remember like the first episode of this was just me like crunching math on this, I think. But I take the minimum. Where are we on time? We're doing fine. We take the minimum of strength and dexterity times 2 plus the maximum, and over here we kind of do the opposite, where we're taking the min plus 2.5 times the maximum between the two, and just there's like stuff like that. The dagger is just 60% on the min compared to the max, which is like a tenth of strength and 2 times your dex. And so like I don't know, there's a bunch of formulas here. If you want to read the formulas, I'll scroll through this and you can pause to actually read some of the formulas. If you have any questions about them, you can put them down below. Yeah, that's what we're going to do here for this segment. I will say, before I go on too far, that I did have to spend a good bit of time figuring out what I was doing with the guns, because the previous idea with the guns was that they kind of did set values, so they would be like good against certain enemies. I don't know. The guns were always kind of awkward, and now they're just doing like percentages of your maximum HP with their modifiers based on like, for example, the flintlock does more damage if the sum of your strength and dexterity is greater than the enemy's strength and dexterity, and if it does more damage, and otherwise it does less, and it crits real well. Here you can see the mace functions. And then here's our club, which does damage more based on your maximum HP. So this makes it kind of like generally okay. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Part of what's going on here is this is taking your MP regen and it's adding it onto this. So if you are wearing caster gear that gives you more MP regen, it's going to boost that up. So that's what's going on. And then the pipe right here, as you can see, is actually kind of, it's 70, so it starts off at a good base, plus your strength, and then it's just a very good crit multiplier. So I'm going to definitely need to keep an eye on that one. It's going to start off strong in early game, and then the raw damage is going to drop off late game, but that critical rate is definitely, or the critical multiplier is definitely something to keep an eye on. And again, the guns are just doing a percentage of your maximum HP. The shotgun here is extremely high at 50 to 75%. A lot of stuff is not supposed to be doing quite that much, so I'll have to see how that feels. And then, yeah, this is calibrated to be between an 1/8 and a 1/6. Here's our chainsaw. The chainsaw does more the less... Basically, maximum TP scales with how much MP regen you have in an inverse function. So the more maximum the more MP regeneration you have, the less maximum TP you have. So the chainsaw becomes better if you have less maximum TP. It's still very, very strong. The magic missile takes an element and your level over 30 times your level over 33. So at 99, this right here is, you know, a certain thing, and this is a certain thing. Plus 10, plus 15, just to make them a little bit better early. Yeah, I don't know. Again, you can pause if you want to actually read some of these, and you're welcome to ask questions about them in the comments. Scythe is kind of complicated. This scales with your HP rate, so the less, and you can see that I have a base on your maximum MP. The less HP you have, the more damage you get off of this bit here. And then we have the scimitar formula, which I basically just doubled the values on because it was about half as strong as it should be when I looked at the spreadsheet. So that's what's going on there. Let's talk about some stuff. I don't know. Let's just go to the enemy thing next. So this is the enemy tool. I've modified it from where it had originally been. I think I was in the middle of that process last time. I don't remember exactly, and I'm not rewatching that video to figure it out. This spell stuff doesn't really matter that much. But the big thing right here is it tells me what the expected 3-shot value should be based on level. So if I raise the level, you can see this goes up. And currently everything is set to the percentage system. So you can see over here, here's how many of these stats are at these percentages. I've also tweaked the reward experience formula to be less generous, shall we say. In playtesting so far, I haven't felt like the decreases are that noticeable, honestly, in terms of like leveling rate and all that sort of thing. But you can see how much it should have here. I don't know, if I just go like 1 in each of these. So I can do randomized stats, and it will randomize these values. So I got that working properly. That's lots of points of precision there. Thanks. It tells me sort of the expected range. 0.3 is very, very high for a stat, so you shouldn't really go above that. 0.2 is actually pretty high. a lot of stuff is balanced around the idea that these are all an eighth, which is what the 0.125 is. That's 1/8 as a decimal. I can also, this is really useful. I can hit 0 stats. This zeroes out all the stats. I can be like, okay, I want this to have 0.2 strength and 0.1 dexterity, and the rest just fill stat zeros. This takes all the 0 stats and just averages the value across it. I can also transfer from a stat to another stat. So if I'm like, oh, I want a bit more dexterity, it'll just like randomly pull values out of the other ones. And kind of makes things all nice and pretty. But you can also see like the damage min is 50, the damage max, because it's the same value, is also 50. So this should be maybe like, I don't know, 1.5 to get it up. Now it's an average threat. Its math there is a lot better. This is level 7, by the way. It has 132 HP. And, you know, you can see that, okay, that gives it 24 strength, 26 dexterity, 12 on all the other stats. If I raise the level up, these values all here are going to stay the same. Like, it's just going to raise these values. So like at level 39, I'm getting 557 reward experience from an average threat level enemy. If I nudge the deadliness down to low threat, you can see the reward experience goes down tremendously to minimal threat to no threat. So that's like basically what this is doing is saying about how many enemies should you have to kill at this type in order to be able to gain a level, and that's dividing the amount of experience you need for that level by that amount. But you can see like at level 39 we're up to 569 HP, and you can see like the stats have grown, but you're always just dealing with these fractional values now. So that's how this tool is set up now. It's got a lot better handle of what threat level actually should be. If I start boosting these up, you can see very quickly like, oh, you're going into potential like one-shot territory here. And so it's like, oh, this thing's real scary. It's got a much better handle on like what damage values are and all that sort of stuff. So this does a much better job of calculating relative deadliness, I think, compared to where it used to do things. And it's just a bit nicer to work with. So that's kind of what to say about that. There have been a number of things in AC modification, but I'm going to show you some stuff in the game before I talk about that. So actually, okay, yeah, let's just show and then explain. So there's not been a whole lot that I've done over here engine side. A lot of it has been tweaking values of things. But I did, this is just from the playtest that I was doing. I did modify the bestiary. So now when you hit escape here, it doesn't hit a null, which is a huge improvement. But also, if I do this, you'll notice down here now, there are like these menu things that you can actually select. To view another entry, I can view a giant rat, and it switches over the giant rat. I can go, I want to look at the flame ooze now, and it switches over the flame ooze, and then I can just close it. Or if I have, say, done one of these, and I'm like, view another entry, and then I'm like, I changed my mind, I'll just close it as well. But that's a big change to the bestiary. Again, there's not a whole lot to show here inside the game, but let's just go over the bestiary. So there's a couple of things I had to do to make that work the way that I wanted it to. But the first thing that I did was, now originally there was another function here, I've deleted it because I don't need it anymore, that would close the bestiary page, and it was just basically looking for you to use the input for use, or let's see, what is it? It's what, conditional branch? It's one of these, yeah, button. Just like if OK or cancel is pressed, close the page. That's what it was originally. Now, there's a couple of things I didn't like about that. One, I didn't like the player wandering around with the page up. Two, it was not entirely intuitive how you closed it. like, you could figure it out, but it wasn't entirely intuitive. That wasn't a big deal. The other thing, though, is if you were standing in front of something you could interact with, it would also interact with that thing when you pushed the button, which was a behavior I wasn't really fond of. So both you wandering around and that, plus having to go back into the Adventurers Kit to open the bestiary again was really obnoxious. So what I've done is I've gone into here, and now there's a label at the top. I'll talk about that in a moment. And it says, view which bestiary entry. You select it, and then it goes into here. This right here, if temp is greater than 0, if temp is equal to 0, that means you hit escape. So it should just close it. So right here, if you hit escape, it erases picture 1, and it does this function call. We'll talk about that in a moment. Otherwise, if you've given it a thing, it fades out the screen. This is where it goes to black. This is very, very short, but when I did not have this here, switching between bestiary entries would get all kind of flickery, and it was really unpleasant, where I would have a moment like between... Basically, it'd have a moment where it's doing this. That would make things really awkward. So it plays the sound effect, and it calls these functions right here. Open bestiary, which is what it was doing before. It just takes the name of the item and looks for a picture with that name inside the picture list. So if I go over to resources, I think is this one? Yeah, and I find image pictures, they're all like right here, right? So they're all named after a thing. The items have that exact same name. So like if I look at this and I hit preview, you'll see, oh, here's the blood bats thing. Like this is what it shows you on the thing. So by using those name things, I'm able to kind of like hook up where it's going. That's kind of what that script does. But then I do this set choice vertical position bottom. We'll talk about that. And then I show your choices. This adds that menu. So if you choose to view another entry, it jumps you back up here to select, and it allows you to select again. If you choose close, it just does this thing of erasing the picture and doing that. I realized that I could show the picture and then have a menu on top of it, and that's how I got that menu there. When I first did it, however, it was positioned at like the 50% mark, which was not good. So I added this thing to move it down. So that's over here in AC modification. I added this choice of vertical position variable, and this function to be able to set it, and this function to be able to retrieve it. And then I modified the choice list update placement function to grab the vertical type as well. If it's top, it sets the message Y here. It's normally set to this, but now it'll set it to 0 if you sell it vertical type as top, and it'll set it to basically the bottom if the type is bottom. This code right here is stuff that was already in it that basically says, like, if you try to stick this above the top or below the bottom of the screen, it won't do that. It will kind of set it to the appropriate place. So that's functionality that I added so that way I could get the thing down in, nope, the sand is the one you see, down in the lower right-hand corner. I'm using my left hand because of anyway, it's not mirrored. So that's functionality that I had to add to get that working the way that I wanted. This allowed stats to go higher, but I talked about that last time, I think. There's still a lot of stuff that I needed to be doing. I think this right here is what actually just shows the picture. Again, it puts it in picture slot 1, it grabs the name of the item, and then these are just some stats about like where it goes and other things. I don't think there's a whole lot here to talk about that I didn't already, except for one thing, which is spell damage, which if you remember I talked about earlier and then we didn't get to. So the spell damage function right here is used to be able to process damage within the thing where I'm specifying the value. So you just specify the high, the low, the high, your accuracy, the crit, and the crit multiplier. And so this will then interpolate the damage based on accuracy, just the same way as it does between for weapons. And then if it's a crit, it will do the damage. If you don't want to have it crit, you can just ignore everything after here and it won't be used, and this will just be null and be like, oh, there isn't anything here. So that's how that works, and then just rounds the damage before passing it on. So this spell damage function is something that I added so that way it was easier to do this math instead of having to do it everywhere inside the thing, in order to be able to get like, here's my accuracy value. Let's make spell accuracy matter for more things than just that. So I think that's a lot of the stuff that's happening here. I feel like that covers most of it. There's probably a little bit that I'm forgetting. There was something that I was forgetting last time, too. Oh, yeah. I forgot to talk about states last time. So something that kind of always bothered me is that silence sealed all it wouldn't seal attack or guard, but it sealed all of your, like, special effects. Now it just seals magic. Paralyzed seals special, which is kind of like physical actions or whatever. But that skill type. And I replaced Confusion with Dazed, which prevents you from guarding. It makes your guard effect really terrible, and it makes your stuff more expensive, which is the effect that was on stuff previously. I've now classified this as the Earth condition and Poison as the Water condition as well, by the way. So there's a little bit of that minor rejiggering of things. But I want to kind of split stuff up. I just felt like this was a better thing. I didn't really feel like I needed Confusion on top of Rage and Fascination. Confusion was just attack anyone anyway. So there is that. That I did and then forgot to mention last time. I don't think there's a whole lot else to go over. Again, at this point, I'm just like updating skills, and some of them are partially updated, and it's kind of figuring out what should these value ranges look like, and all that sort of thing. Happy about the bestiary change. Playtesting notes. Yeah, so I fixed this. I made the beginning of battle TP consistent. I think I talked about that last time, though. Oh, yeah, this right here. I should talk about that. This is a thing that I already fixed. I went over that at the beginning. So this right here, yeah, MP at the end of battle. So this was... Oh, I have to go find this now. This is something where the... at the end of battle, I was restoring 50% of your MP to you. And I didn't quite like that. It felt like I was giving you too much MP back, which I didn't like because... not quite there yet. Yeah, on Battle End, right here. The amount of MP that I was giving to you when it was raw 50% was too generous. Like, it basically meant that you wouldn't run out of MP if you're using a lot of spells. Or, like, you wouldn't start with lower MP. So I now have this, like, complicated formula here, which is, like, math.round square root of 1 minus MP rate. I don't know why I don't just have MP rate, but whatever. That's what it is. Times this MMP minus the MP. So this is the amount of MP you have missing over 2. So it's like, okay, what's going on here? I think I should have it in math. So let's check. Because this is where I worked out a lot of this stuff. Yeah. So this is the end of MP battle regain. So if you have 60 MP, this is how much you'd gain if you had 15 MP at the end. So let's just do equals this plus this. So if you have 15 MP, you'd get 19 back. If you have 0 MP, you'd get 30 back. You get half of it back. That's how this works. So if I go back over into the formula, I mean, it's right here, but it's the square root of 1 minus the MP rate. So 1 minus the MP rate, if you have 0 MP, is 1, which is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. And then this is how much MP you're missing over 2. So what this basically does is it does some scaling by MP rate and how much MP you're missing. It's a weird formula, but it produces the results I want. So if you have no MP left, and I can just like bump this up to 60 and it'd be, or 90 and it'd be 45, right? If you have no MP left, then it's just like, I'm going to give you 50% of your MP back if you have no MP left. If I have a quarter, which is what 15 would be, it gives a little bit more than a quarter, or like, so I'm missing 45 MP, and it doesn't quite give half that back. If I have half, it gives only 11 back, right? So you can see right here, 15, I would go up to 34. So that's plus 19, but this is plus 11. If I'm at like 50 MP, it's like, yeah, you get 2 back. So it gives progressively less MP back. This would obviously be 0. It gives progressively less MP back the more MP you have, to where like up here at 57, I don't get any MP back, right? Because of the rounding. But if I'm down here at like 20, it's like, yeah, you get some amount back. But you'll notice this is 36 at 20. Down here is 34. So it's going to give you a little bit above 30. So basically it kind of like figures out how much I think you should have between half MP and maximum MP, and it kind of like scales it to kind of like try to equalize it a little bit. So it just, the more MP you have at the end of battle, the less you get refunded. The less MP you have, the more you get refunded, with the idea that it just allows you to be able to maintain your MP levels a little bit better, to a certain point. But it doesn't, like before, when it was just always return 50%. If you used less than half of your MP, you would always just have full MP at the end of battle, and I didn't want that. I wanted there to be a little bit of attrition to it. So this gives a bit of attrition where it's like, oh yeah, if you've used up a lot of your MP, it's not going to refund a bunch. And like if you have 120, like this will give you 49 from 15 to get you back up there, because you're closer to half. Like this will give you 21 back, and like if I'm at 100, it'll be like, yeah, you get 4 back. So it's like it scales appropriately with your maximum MP, where if you have more maximum MP, you do get a bigger refund. But this is still only going to refund you up to 60% if you're all the way at 0. So that system is in place just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on with that. I don't think there's anything else from the playtesting notes to really talk about. Lots of things need nerfs. Lots of things need stuff added. It's just going to be a process of adding that. And a lot of my priority at the moment is not with addressing these things. It's with getting enemies put into the proper values with the changes that I've been making, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, process of recalibrating skills really is what it comes down to, and it's going to be recalibrating all of the enemies, because I've only recalibrated so many, and once you get to a certain point, you're facing blood bats with 1200 HP, which is way more than they should be having. So, and there's going to be a lot of playtesting to make sure that I'm not making the player too powerful too quickly as well, but they also need to be somewhat more powerful than random encounters. So we will see where this ends up. Yeah, I guess that's really all that I have to say. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and goodbye.